Is Bob Kroll retiring, or is he just getting tired of being in public? I gotta say, good morning, Minneapolis, and maybe St. Paul if you play your cards right. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We really appreciate it. Hey, we have 33 members now. So thank you so much to the one extra person that signed on. We appreciate it. We're looking to get 1,000 by the end of February. I know, tall task, but hey, baby's still gonna go for it. We're still gonna go for it. So here we are. Thank you so much for tuning in. In today's obvious news, Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, complained that he had to have his 14-year-old son evacuated from his mansion as Stop the Steal protesters and white supremacists rioted outside of his house. Well, Tim, now you know how it feels to be a black family that's having their house raided by the BCA. So, now you know how it feels. Okay. Well, rivaling speculation that Antifa was responsible for the riot at the nation's capital last Wednesday, authorities arrested this man who was wearing a sweatshirt that said Camp Auschwitz on it. Yes, a white man wearing a sweatshirt that said Camp Auschwitz on it was arrested. The Hill writes, the rioter who wore the sweatshirt referencing the Nazi concentration camp in Poland was identified as Robert Keith Packer, CNN first reported. The FBI confirmed to The Hill that Packer was arrested in the Virginia city on Wednesday on federal charges related to his, quote, role in the events at the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021, end quote. Role in the events is so light, like the events. The events. Oh, the insurrection at the Capitol, the stealing of the podium, the infiltration of Nancy Pelosi's information, defecating on the floor, causing harm to the nation's capital. Those events. Got it. Robert Keith Packer is learning the hard way that he does have freedom of speech, but he doesn't have freedom of repercussion, which is the same reason why retail workers can't say, go f yourself. If anything, these white supremacists are learning the hard way why their grandfathers wore hoods. Speaking of hoods, neo-Nazis, and white supremacists, Bob Kroll has announced that he's retiring at the end of the month. Mpls writes, after reviewing the bigger picture, it is in my family's best interest for me to retire 4 months early, Kroll said. Which begs the question, is Kroll referring to his immediate family that resides with him at his home in Hugo, Minnesota, or the biker gang that he rides with, that dons white power insignia? Bob Kroll has been on the force for decades, and throughout those decades, Bob Kroll has brought us the hits. And by hits, we mean physical violence. In 1995, Bob Kroll was cited for excessive force when using racial slurs, choking, beating, and kicking a 15-year-old biracial boy. In 2002, Bob Kroll was cited for excessive force when he beat up an elderly couple. In February of 2004, Bob Kroll beat and kicked a man outside of an impound lot. Impound lots are frustrating, but damn, Bob. In May of 2004, Bob was on a hot streak and decided to keep it going in a Northeast art crawl. Somebody bumped into his car, he and his friend got out, beat up the man, taunted the bystanders, and then they punched the man's sister in the face. And no, that wasn't performance art. Bob was for real. Which begs the question, is Bob Kroll retiring, or is he just getting tired of beating up the people that pay him in public? Speaking of tax-paid public violence and failing upwards, the 4 former officers of the Minneapolis Police Department who are responsible for killing George Floyd, their trials will be separated. Yes, Judge Cahill just announced that Derek Chauvin's trial will be held in March, and the other 3 officers will be held in late summer. WCCO writes, Judge Peter Cahill cited the limitations of physical space during the coronavirus pandemic for his order to split the defendants' trials. It is impossible to comply with COVID-19 physical restrictions, given how many lawyers and support personnel that 4 defendants say would be present. The judge added that while the pandemic situation may be greatly improved by June, the court is not so optimistic given news reports detailing problems with the vaccine rollout. We here at Onsite Public Media have devised a solution on how you could hold all 4 killer cops on trial in March. Hold it at an auditorium in one of Minneapolis public schools. Sure, why not? Walz and the Minneapolis Public School Board are so convinced that the global pandemic has stopped pandemicking that they're sending teachers, staff, and students back to school on February 1st. So why not hold the killer cops trial in one of those schools since they're so confident that the pandemic has stopped pandemicking? Yep, you heard that right. Hennepin County treats its killer cops better than Minneapolis Public Schools treats its staff and students. Speaking of elected officials who are about to lose their jobs, at onsitepublicmedia.com, we created a webpage that shows every candidate that's running for city council in Minneapolis for 2021. When you take a look at the webpage, you'll see it's kind of quiet. Ward 1, Kevin Reich, uncontested. Ward 8, Andrea Jenkins, uncontested. Ward 12, Andrew Johnson, uncontested. Ward 13, Linnea Palmisano, uncontested. Ward 10, holy Bye Bye Bender, hello Civil Ward 10. Yes, Ward 10 has the most candidates running for city council in 2021 in the city of Minneapolis. Let's look at the candidates, starting with Alicia Gibson. Taught students about white supremacy, patriarchy, and capitalism. Led volunteers at Planned Parenthood. Opened a bookstore in Cincinnati. Next up, Aisha Chugtai. Helped found the Muslim Caucus of the Young Democrats of America. Served vice chair to the CD5 DFL. Entered the DFL Women's Hall of Fame as a rising star. Next up, Katie Jones. Organized the Neighborhood Association's first environmental committee project. As the president of the Lowry Hill East Neighborhood Association, led efforts to increase renter involvement. Grew committee's work to include a multi-neighborhood composting program. Ward 10, somebody better clean up these organics. Next up, David Wheeler. Has worked at the Alexandra House, a battered women's shelter. Director of Development for Community Involvement Programs. Has a British Labrador Retriever. Next up, Stephen Frick. Has been working with Stonewall DFL to help facilitate new board elections. Attended weekly protests and donated to local food and supply drives. Founding member of the Northeast Florida Socialist Rifle Association. We don't know what that is either. Next up, Chris Parsons. Was a firefighter for over 20 years. You know what? There's a song called Police, but nobody's ever written a song the fire department or first responders. You know? Good for the fire department. Good on those first responders. Back to Chris Parsons. 2015 International Association of Firefighters State President of the Year. Say that 10 times fast. 2015 and 2019 Clean Water Action Hero Award winner. There you have it, Civil Ward 10, and many other wards in Minneapolis that are up for grabs. The election races are heating up, and they're only getting hotter. Hopefully we won't have to call like Chris Parsons' old co-workers or anything to put out a fire, but I'm just civically engaged. Go vote. All right, onsitepublicmedia.com. And that'll about do it for us here at Onsite Public Media. Thank you so much for watching Good Morning Minneapolis. My name is Toussaint Morrison. I've been your host today, and we hope you have an amazing Thursday. For us to sustain this show, you can go to onsitepublicmedia.com, and the button in the upper right that says membership, that's us. That helps us sustain this show, and hopefully helps us to get out of my kitchen shooting this show as well. So thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you in the next one. Our work is never done.